I'm on the line right now with Mike Droese, better known to wrestling fans as Duke the Dumpster Droese. Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Not too bad.
Great.
I kind of thought of you because we have Public Works Week coming up, and what better way to celebrate people in that industry than tie it to wrestling? And your character was well known for that, being a sanitation engineer, as I used to call it when I was a kid.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime somebody called me a garbage man, I told them I was educated. I was a sanitation engineer.
When you first came on WWF, then TV, and even in hindsight now, I think there's a misconception that you were part of this. I don't even know the right way to put it. The industry, you came in with like a trade where TL Hopper was a plumber, you were a garbage man, and the Goon was a hockey player, and all of these like new generation gimmicks. But if I understand correctly, you were already using a character similar to this before you came to WWF, right?
Yeah, and I did that on purpose because I knew that's the way that Vince McMahon thought. He was still holding on to a lot of the same ideals as the 1980s and into the 90s. He was kind of still trying to do the same thing, and whether it worked or not, I knew that's what he was looking for. And I also knew that he was always looking for somebody to get over with the people, especially the working class man. So a blue collar gimmick was perfect. And that's why I came up with it down in Florida when I was working the independent scene, and I wrestled as the garbage man, Rocco Gibraltar.
There you go. There's a name for you. So when you ended up getting in contact with WWF, did they have any kind of insight of, little tweaks just to kind of make it like the WWF version of what you were already doing?
Well, interestingly, when I came in, it was Shane McMahon who produced my vignettes because he was kind of running through all the different facets of the office. He was kind of, I don't know, it was kind of like he was doing all the different jobs around the company. Maybe like he was being groomed to take it over someday, I think, or just in general working there. He was probably early 20s at that time. And I sat down with him, and he said they were throwing around a few names, but then he said Duke the Dumpster. That was the first name he said. You could tell that's the one they were going to use. And Droese's my real last name, and he never said anything. They didn't, it was basically the same gimmick, but he just kind of put a tan overshirt on it just to cover up the name tag that I had, which still said Rocco. Mm-hmm. That was the only reason. That was the only change they made physically to the character. In fact, I had it written in my contract that I owned the intellectual property to the garbage man gimmick and the way that it looked and all those things. Because that was mine before I got there, and the Rocco Gibraltar name and all that. But when you start working there, the agents behind the scenes and office people in general, but really the agents, those road agents that are the old school wrestlers, try to start molding you and even changing you in many different ways. And a lot of them are in bad ways, because I was getting over just fine down in Florida the way I was doing my gimmick. Like, I'll give you an example. The first time I did interviews, we were doing interviews for an upcoming town, and down in Florida, I always yelled. I was a fan of the Road Warriors, and there was never a time when the Road Warriors didn't yell and scream. So I would yell in my promos, and I mean right off the bat. I don't remember who the agent was, but he said, "No, you don't need to yell." He said, "We don't yell in interviews here." Because if you yell all the time, then it doesn't mean anything. They give me this backwards old school psychology or whatever. And I should have just kept doing things the way that I did, but they would, little by little, they would start picking apart and taking away pieces. And I think that affected me. And I made the mistake of trying to please everybody. And it kind of ended up tearing apart a lot of what I had done and what I created back in Florida. And it made it so it was not fun to be there later on, those things. But yeah, it was interesting the way that they do try to take control over you. And a lot of people make the mistake that I made, trying to please them, whereas you should be trying to get over, because Vince doesn't care if you're making Chief Jay Strongbow happy or if you're making George the Animal Steel happy. If you're getting over, Vince McMahon is happy, and that's all that matters. And that's the way I should have approached it from the beginning. So,
one thing that you just mentioned I thought was really interesting, that you had that clause in your contract. Was that something that was really like that common back then?
Well, those contracts were a joke, first of all. Our contracts were, and you've heard this probably many times if you've talked to any of the wrestlers from those eras. Everybody that started there had a contract that the only guaranteed money was 10 wrestling matches a year for $150 a match. That was the guarantee. It was nothing. And basically, even J.J. Dillon on the phone said, this is just a chance to work here. And a lot of people wanted that chance because that was the place to work, because the territories were dying fast. And so when you come in, that's the contract you sign. But on the very, very back page, it had a blank and it for established intellectual property. And I knew enough to know that if I ever wanted to use the Garbage Man character again, even without their name, I would have to write that in there. And I wrote it in. And I just remember saying, should I write this in, because I was using this before, this character, and the name, the Garbage Man, Rocco Gibraltar. And I think it was J.J. Dillon, and I was at TV, and I brought my contract to give to him, and I just mentioned that before I gave it to him, and he almost seemed slightly annoyed. He goes, yeah, sure, whatever, write that in. It was like, almost like he didn't care, but like, he never heard anybody, come in and ask a question like that. We should be like crawling on our knees, groveling, thanking them for letting us work there, I guess. But that, I had enough, I knew enough to at least, not that it made a big deal or I'm running around using Rocco Gibraltar anywhere, but being able to wrestle with a certain likeness that people remember you as can have a little bit of power in terms of you maybe making money later on down the road. And I had enough foresight to know that. So I did write that in on that very back page, that blank page that said intellectual property. I wrote that in. And so, yeah, that's the way that worked. And
it was a good decision in hindsight, because, you're still even using it to this day. I know you've made a couple appearances.
Well, I'm using it. I'm using right now. I'm doing things as Duke the Dumpster Droese because they really don't care.
But you still have
any money at it.
But you still have the right, because sometimes you see like formerly known as on a poster, but you've done a few appearances.
Any big event, they would do that. But.
You've done a few appearances for WrestlePro in New Jersey, and
sure.
I think the last one was the one where Tiny Lister was on it, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, that was a really cool show, man. They had a good thing going.
Yeah, they run a really, really good show.
Yeah.
And then I did not know this, but you competed at Chikara's Infinite Gauntlet match last year?
Yeah. They called me. I think it was kind of last minute. They just flew me in and flew me out within a few hours. I kind of got off the plane, went in there, got dressed, came running out in the middle of that big old match and slammed a few people, hit somebody with a garbage can, and then somebody put me in an armbar and I rolled out and went home. Ran back to the airport, got on the plane and went home. But it was those people also run a really cool outfit there, man. Quackenbush, he's a very smart. He has a very good mind for the wrestling business. I sat there and listened to him talk to his people before the show, and he has a lot of knowledge and he knows what he's doing. And it was a very well put together show, I have to say. Much respect to him and what they were doing.
Yeah, I live in the Philadelphia suburbs, and I've only ever been there once. It's probably going to be a little while longer now, but, I really like the arena, and it was easy to get to, so.
Yeah, they got a good little thing going there. A bunch of cool characters, a lot of them are established.
Mm-hmm.
People know them, so it's cool.
Jumping back into your WWF career, you really got a significant push to start. You feuded with Jerry Lawler, that, kind of like a benchmark for a lot of different wrestlers. Like Bret Hart worked with him. I think the Ultimate Warrior worked with him a little bit when he returned. And
Roddy Piper worked with him.
There you go. And
yeah.
One of these instances, I see people saying that you and Lawler were responsible for one of the first instances of hardcore wrestling on WWF TV. Like, do you ever hear that because of the trash can shot?
Yeah, I hear it a lot, and they say that because it was a trash can shot, and trash cans were used so much after that later on in hardcore style wrestling. But if you ask me, I would say probably one of the first kind of instances of hardcore type something happening on a WWF television. It would be Roddy Piper and Jimmy Superfly Snuka with the coconut. Mm-hmm. That was pretty stiff, and that was I thought that was pretty rough. But people said that me and Lawler, the thing we did, and the thing about that was it was on live TV, and we really didn't have the okay to do that. We just they wanted to set it up where we talked, and he wouldn't let me in the ring during King's Court, and we argued, and I decided to leave, and he was going to run behind me and jump me to set up the heat for an angle. And beforehand, Lawler asked me if we could do something where he hit me with the can, and I said I was fine with it. So we just kind of roundabout talked to the agent that was in charge of the segment, which was Jack Lanza. And Jack Lanza, if you know him, he's freaking old school, like, don't ask for permission, just ask for forgiveness later. he said, it's live television, screw it, just go do it. And that's what we did. And if you watched it, if you ever saw it, when he hit me, the first shot, it's like, boom, and I drop to a knee. And he goes to hit me again, and immediately the camera angle cuts away to a very far camera up in the rafters of the building somewhere where you can barely see. You just see the garbage can coming up and down, and they freaked out. They freaked out about it. They put, commentary was Gorilla Monsoon and Macho Man at the time, and they came right back on live and said, we apologize for that. You'll never see it again. You'll never see something like that on our television again. And we apologize. They just apologized up and down, which could have been good, but, it really started to kind of kill the angle. I think that turned Vince off, or maybe some other people off. And then, like, the next weekend on Superstars, they did a tape segment where Jerry Lawler was in the studio, and he had to apologize to me. And it was comedy, and it was funny, but I just didn't think it was good for the heat of the angle. And the angle itself just kind of fizzled out after that. It was just really kind of strange. Something that should have easily been a pay-per-view blow-off match never went to pay-per-view. We ended up just doing the blow-off on Monday Night Raw, where I wrestled him, and of course I beat him, but I beat him by count-out because Doink and Dink the Clown interfered, and that was setting up his next angle with Doink the Clown, where they did, each wrestler had 4 midget wrestlers on, I don't know if it was like a SummerSlam or a Survivor Series or something, but, Jerry Lawler had all the little kings, and Doink the Clown had Dink and the 3 other little clown wrestlers. So they turned over the angle, they ended it and put him with Doink, and just, it just ended there, and it really wasn't anything great, and I certainly didn't get a pay-per-view payday out of it either. So it started off real hot, and it died pretty fast because they weren't ready for that kind of violence on the TV yet. So
yeah, I mean, I remember watching that, but I kind of forgot about the apology and just kind of doing my own research this time around, and I'm like just thinking like there's some, not even like before the Attitude Era, but like just some general stuff, like that's what you needed to apologize for. And it was like you don't even see the the one shot, like you said, like it goes up into the crowd and you kind of see the can go up, but not the strike. Moving ahead, you ended up getting another pretty big feud with Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley at the time, and another memorable incident in wrestling, or it wasn't a gimmick match, like, but he shaved, he cut your hair off and, really had some heat on that one too. Do you have any fond memories about that feud, how it went? Did you think at the time, this is going to pay off more than the missed opportunity that the Lawler feud had?
Well, Vince certainly told me it was going to. It's funny because that thing came about because I was frustrated and basically complained. And I was just frustrated because they were just killing me on TV. And basically what ended up happening is I went to Bruce Pritchard at TV and they wanted me to do another job, incidentally, for a new guy that came in right after Triple H, a guy by the name of the Ringmaster. And I refused to do the job. Of course, I sat down with Steve and explained it to him, and he fully understood, and we became good friends after that. But funny thing, I refused to do the job for like the greatest, one of the biggest stars the wrestling business has ever seen. But it was the moment when I felt like I needed to take a stand because my contract was up and they were just killing me. And so they pulled me aside. Vince pulled me aside out in the hall. We had a little meeting, and I just basically was frustrated and asked him what I needed to do to, better myself there. And he said I was doing it. So they gave me the Triple H angle. I was frustrated being the blue-collar babyface, and I had told Vince, I remember sitting in a meeting with Vince and Jim Ross saying I wanted to change my appearance and turn heel and just change things and maybe just become Duke Droese. And Jim Ross took the opportunity to say, well, why don't we cut your hair and use it as part of this angle? And I said, it's fine, as long as you let me get some kind of revenge. I know I'm not going to beat him or I'm not going to cut his hair, but in the end, I got to come out looking, like I got him back. And, of course, they agreed to all that. So we started this thing, and I remember I handed the scissors to Triple H. He was walking in the locker room at TV with Kevin Nash, and they just both looked at each other like, what the heck? The reason he cut my hair, by the way, is because we had a match before that. We did a free-for-all match before the Royal Rumble to see who would go in number 1 and who would go in number 30. And I actually beat him. Once again, it was by disqualification because Lord knows they wouldn't ever let me pin anybody. And he was mad about that. That's why he attacked me on Superstars and cut my hair. So we have the angle, and we go into the In Your House pay-per-view. And I just remember, like, the night before, one of the agents called me and just said, he's going to win. It was going to be a fuck finish where he was going to hit me with my own garbage can lid and just pin me. 1, 2, 3. And I wasn't happy about it. But, of course, I had already re-signed my new 1-year deal. And I remember Vince McMahon, I was talking to him on the phone at one point, and he just said, just show up with a smile on your face and do your job. So, that was the beginning of the end. I was really pissed. But working with Triple H was great. He was great. He was always willing to do anything. I mean, Lord knows, and I tell people this all the time, I beat the living hell out of him. I threw him all over the place, and he went for everything. He didn't care. He was happy to do it. Of course, he's happy to do it because it makes him look like Superman in the end when he wins. But he was willing to take any of the big bumps I gave him. He was great to work with. He was an excellent worker. But at that time, I was just really frustrated. So that's how that came about, and that's kind of how it concluded. And then after that, they had Triple H do the 12-second job to the Warrior at WrestleMania 12, and then they put him in an angle with Mark Mara, who was just coming in, and Duke went back to doing jobs for new heels on TV. So that was when it pretty much ended.
How early did you know that you wanted to leave? Like, was it in the middle of this, or did you just kind of make a decision after the fact, like, maybe this isn't going to be what I do?
it was just a strange thing because you're so frustrated because that was your dream your whole life. You worked so hard to get there, and then you get there, and it turns out it wasn't everything you thought it was going to be. So it was just this, that's where a lot of drinking and using drugs starts. And I just remember there was a few instances. Randy Savage had this old saying. He said, "Don't ever take yourself out of the game," and there's a lot of truth to that. And I remember on several occasions, once I was talking to Steve Austin, once I was talking to Bret Hart. I was talking to Bret Hart on the Bruce, or on the, whatever it's called, the Wrestle Vessel, or whatever the wrestling cruise was. We all did that. And I remember that was right before I left. And I was like, I think I'm done here, man. I got to get out of here. I can't take this anymore, And he goes, you should really think about, before you take yourself out of this business. That's not something you want to do. He said that. Austin said that. The Undertaker said that. I was sitting in strangely, I had never traveled with Taker or nothing like that. But one night, on the end of a loop, I rode back to the airport with him in a rental car. And I just told him, because I was always trying to get along with everybody and joking around and doing stupid shit. And I just told him, I said, I think I need to leave for a while. I said, I need to quit being the village idiot, and I need to go home and recollect myself. And he goes, yeah, but you don't ever want to take yourself out of this business. They all kept saying the same thing. And there's a lot of truth to that. Because once you leave, Vince, out of sight, out of mind. You're basically like, in a lot of ways, you're dead to him. Now, that's not to say people haven't been brought back. But you're gone. And that's what happened. I was just so frustrated. And I think my last TV match was TL Hopper. I did a job for him. And I just kept telling Vince, I kept pulling Vince aside, and we had these little informal meetings in the hallways where I would talk to him, and Jerry Briscoe would be standing there. But I told him I was frustrated, and he said he wanted to send me to Memphis to develop as a heel. And he said he was going to pay me $1,000 a week, which was, funny thing is, that was a lot more than I was making then in the WWF. That's how sad it was. And I think I said the words that sealed my fate, just trying to be intelligent. I said, I'm going to need that in writing. And I just remember the look on his face. Of course, he agreed. But that was it. And then probably, I don't know, man, it was after WrestleMania 12, but a few weeks after all that, Jerry Briscoe walked up to me at a TV and said, Vince said you can go ahead on home. And I still had 8 months left on the contract. So, I tried to be cool, and I said I expect a full release, but I appreciate the opportunity. I said all that regular bullshit you're supposed to say, but I was crushed, because I said I wanted to leave. Well, now I was leaving. And, but that's how it all went down.
Was there ever, like, a chance or did you ever think about maybe going to, like, a WCW or, something with a lighter schedule like that? Or were you kind of, like, just done with wrestling?
No, I still wanted to wrestle. I went home and, freaking got on steroids and did all the wrong things you can do. I went to Germany and wrestled for a while, which was a good experience. I'd say 3/4 of it I was just drinking alcohol. But then the last town we did, Bremen, for, I don't know, it was a couple weeks or a month. And I got serious there and started working out. And then when I got home from Germany, I was getting into good shape. I was strong, but I was still doing a lot of drugs and all the stupid shit. But what I did was I worked my way into getting a tryout with WCW, but I also had the WWF willing to take another look. And interestingly, I think they were really close together. It was probably within a week of each other, going in and trying out for both. And I remember I asked two people what I should do. I asked Steve Austin. I was still talking to Steve, and I was still talking to Bret. I asked them both what I should do. And Bret Hart said, you should do them both. That's the right thing to do. That's a professional thing. And Austin said, "You better pick one, man, because these are very vindictive people. So you better choose the one you want to go to and go do that one." Well, unfortunately, I took Brett's advice and I did both. And I just remember it seemed like the mood at both of them was not good. I think they all knew. Everybody knew about each other's tryouts, and it just wasn't good. And I don't think Eric Bischoff cared about me at all anyway, if he even knew who I was. But so that didn't work out, and the WWF wasn't good either. Just the tryouts weren't good. And I worked with Paul Diamond, and that wasn't good. And I worked with Pierre, because he was trying to get back in. So, these were all matches with guys on both sides that were trying to get in. It wasn't like a dark match against an enhancement talent to show your best stuff. It was two guys trying to get a job, putting the ring together. That's never a good thing. So, it didn't work out. And I went back home, and that was, I worked for these guys in Florida again, but that was pretty much the end of it.
And if I understand correctly, you went back to school and got your master's in education?
Yeah, fast forward to 2003. I was down in Florida all messed up, and basically I had to come up to Tennessee, and I went to rehab, actually. And then as I came out of there and started to kind of rebuild up in Tennessee, which is where I still live, I had I had a 4-year undergrad degree from University of Miami in criminal justice, and I always wanted to be a teacher, so I looked into it. I started as a substitute and then became a teacher assistant, and they helped me get into a program. It was a master's program at Tennessee Tech to become a special education teacher, and the state paid for it. So I went back to school and got a master's and became a special education teacher for, the better part of 10 years in Tennessee.
Are you still in education?
Well, no. See, what happened was I ended up having an old wrestling injury come up my foot, and I made the mistake of starting to take painkillers again and basically relapsed. I had no business doing. So within 3 years, I lost my job, I lost my left foot, and I got arrested. So I got 2 felonies for basically selling pills to somebody. What had happened was one of the guys I was running around with getting pills with all the time got busted for some bullshit, and they flipped him, and he set up a bunch of people that he was dealing with. And so I sold him a handful of some kind of pills, and they busted me. So the teaching career was gone, all that stuff. Just basically had lost everything again. But as part of that thing, I went through a drug court program here where I live in Tennessee, and it's a very strict supervision program. 6 months of house arrest and all kinds of stuff. But I went through that and finished it. I was done with drugs after that, and I knew it. And I started really working hard not to ever do them again, which I still do today. But I successfully completed the drug court program, and I did so well that they asked me to work for them. So that's where I work now. I worked for an adult recovery court program here in Tennessee. It's kind of a cross between being probation and kind of drug treatment at the same time. We take people out of jails and prison and give an opportunity, that have an underlying substance abuse problem. We give them a chance to change their life and not go to jail or prison. Some people make it, some people don't, but it's an opportunity. But that's what I do now.
It sounds like you have a good perspective, like a clear mind now, and it sounds like you're using your experiences to try to help people and in a positive way and turn your life around. I think should be applauded.
And I had to. I remember a long time ago, when guys were dying from drug overdoses in the wrestling business, Vince did this interview. It might have been the Bob Costas thing, but somewhere Vince was doing an interview, and he goes, this interviewer asked him about like the 80s. Vince used to party in the 80s. Vince liked to party. And the interviewer asked him some stuff about that. He goes, you know what? Eventually, we all have to grow up. And I had to grow up. I had to grow up. I learned a hard lesson. I was forced by getting arrested initially to change, but I was willing to do whatever it took. And the fact that I get to work with people and help people going through the same thing now, also in return, it helps me. It continues to help me stay clean and on the right path. Because I'm constantly working with people that are in the beginning stages of it, where I remember being and I don't ever want to go back to. It's a constant reminder of where I don't want to go back to. So.
And as I mentioned when we just first started talking, you're still doing some wrestling appearances, and you get to have this job where you're helping people. Do you feel like you have the best of both worlds, where you still get to meet your fans and help people, and still have a balance between both careers?
Interestingly, I tried to hide from the world with the drug addiction and getting arrested, and I just wanted to disappear, and I wanted everybody to forget I ever existed, and I was never going to do anything again involving wrestling. And then in 2018, just a couple of years ago, this promoter here in Tennessee got me to come do an appearance, just this little high school fundraiser appearance, and I went and did it, signed autographs, and met some people, and the fans were really nice. But then afterwards, the people that hit me up on social media, it just went crazy. They started friend requesting me, and I went from like 180 friends to like 2,500 friends in 2 weeks, because I started accepting them and I started interacting with these people, and it kind of opened me back up to it. And now I really enjoy it. I'm having fun with it now. It's not a job for me anymore, and I'm not stressed out trying to get a spot anywhere. I'm just doing stuff that is fun for me, and it's great to make a little extra money on the side, of course, but I do stuff that I enjoy. I enjoy talking to the fans. I interact with them a lot on social media, and it just kind of took off. I started telling road stories and stuff, and people really reacted to it. It's kind of a rebirth of the parts of the wrestling business that I actually enjoyed when I was there, which was interacting with the fans. I get to do that again. And so in that respect, it's fun for me now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is the best of both worlds.
I've been doing this feature called The Watch List, where I've been asking everybody, especially now that everybody's home and has more time, if there's certain wrestling matches a match of yours that, you'd really like to recommend to people, maybe have a new appreciation for?
Just anything, any of the Triple H stuff that we did was always good. A lot of my best matches were in house shows. When I worked in Germany, man, I wrestled guys like Fit Finlay on a regular basis. They brought in Terry Funk. Otto made me his champion, and he brought in Terry Funk to work with me. And I've had some matches with some people that were not necessarily televised, which people are kind of finding. It's amazing that some of the stuff people can find these days that were actually taped, and you never saw them, you never thought you'd see them again, but they pull them out of who knows where. But a lot of my stuff, I had a lot of great matches with Pierre, the Quebecer, or Jean-Pierre Lafitte, now PCO. We had some great brawls, man. He always liked to go full speed, which he still does, which is why he's still wrestling at 52 or 53 or however old he is. But, but anything, as far as the stuff that was any pay-per-view kind of stuff, the Triple H stuff, of course, stands out, and those kind of matches. As far as watching anything, I don't really watch any wrestling now. I get my wrestling entertainment in the comment sections of Facebook and Instagram. That's where I keep up with stuff. I find out what's going on with all the people yelling at each other, about AEW versus WWE versus whatever, NXT or whatever it is. It's just ridiculous the way the fans act. It's definitely a different breed of fan nowadays. It's just totally different, but it's entertaining to me. I sit back and enjoy it, but I don't really watch wrestling. If something is really, really talked about, I'll pull it up on YouTube and check it out, like a replay, but that's about it.
Yeah. And like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to look for some of these videos and find it. I talked to Christian last week, and he was like, "Oh yeah, there was this house show that I saw, and he knew the city, he knew the date, and I looked it up, and it was there." And I couldn't believe it. So maybe some of this stuff international, or I wouldn't be surprised if like WWE they do the hidden gems on the network. So when I'm looking, I'm excited to like dig into this now.
Yeah, it's always fun to find something that you thought was gone forever.
All right. Mike Droese, thank you very much for all of your time today. I really had fun getting to know a little bit more about you, your career. Have a good afternoon. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate you having me on the show. Thanks.